Paloma Shemirani was a normal 23-year-old woman. She'd just graduated from the University of Cambridge. She had her whole life ahead of her. But in December 2023, Paloma was diagnosed with cancer. She was diagnosed specifically with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a huge blow, as any cancer diagnosis is, but the prognosis was good. She was young, she was healthy, the cancer was treatable. With the right treatment, she had a very, very high chance of surviving. But Paloma didn't get the right treatment. In fact, she didn't get any sort of treatment at all, because her mother, Kate, a famous conspiracy theorist, a famous anti-vaxxer, refused to let her have cancer treatment of the sort that you and I would know, chemotherapy, radiotherapy and so on. Instead, she advocated a series of alternative treatments that, of course, because they're completely unproven, did nothing. Paloma went on to die as a result of that cancer. And now her two brothers are campaigning for justice for her and for accountability for her mum. One of them is Gabriel Shemirani, twin brother of Paloma, who died after, as I say, her mother Kate influenced her and ordered her, really, to refuse cancer treatment. Delighted to say Gabriel joins us now to talk about what is, Gabriel, I don't know if you heard me say it before the news, one of the worst stories I've read in a very, very long time, and I'm so sorry, firstly, for what you and your brother have had to go through. Let's talk first, if we could, a bit more about your mum. Were the conspiracy theories that she's now become quite famous for, and the sort of fantasies that she promotes, were they always part of your life growing up?
I mean, so conspiracy theories were always part of our life growing up, in the sense that our dad was always into the sort of more mainstream 9/11 conspiracy theories. I think with my mother, she was always quite a narcissist and quite a paranoid individual. So for her, it was more finding an outlet and a means to exercise that. And she found that in conspiracy theories, especially around sort of 2012, because she was diagnosed with cancer herself, had conventional treatment, which cured her. And then she followed it with alternative treatments, because she wanted to model herself, I believe, as like a Mel Gibson or a Jess Ainscough type, because she craved that notability and that image that they had. And from that point onwards, so, from the age of being 11 or 12, it definitely coloured how, she controlled our diet or what we were allowed to eat, whether we were allowed to drink tap water or not. I would say that most of our childhood, all of our childhood was coloured by conspiracy theories, but from the age of 11 onwards, it was extraordinarily coloured by medically based conspiracy theories against the medical establishment, and this real intense pressure to reject any kind of rational medical interventions.
So when your twin, Paloma, was diagnosed with cancer, your mum thought the doctors that were trying to treat and help Paloma were actually trying to kill her.
It's a difficult one, working out what Kay actually thinks and whether she's leveraging it to gain power and control. She had a very, very, obviously Kay's not here to respond to allegations, but a very turbulent relationship, if we can put it that way, with my sister. And I think in some parts she wanted, I don't know whether she believed or she even thought about it that much as to whether about what the doctor wanted to do with my sister. I just think she saw it as an opportunity to gain control over my sister, and also, again, market her as this like Mel Gibson type, and this sort of like this opportunity for notoriety that Kate desired. She definitely led Paloma to believe that she thought the doctors were going to kill her.
Do you blame her for your sister's death, for your twin's death?
My mother, yes, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt.
But if it wasn't for her, then Paloma would still be with us today.
If it wasn't for my mother's influence, if it wasn't for my mother's coercion of my sister away from conventional treatments, I have no doubt that my sister would still be here. With chemotherapy, she had an 83% survival rate after 5 years for her particular cancer. I think we could say with a lot of confidence that it is very likely that my sister would still be here.
And just to be clear, she didn't have any chemotherapy because your mum basically prevented her?
No chemotherapy whatsoever. My mum pressured her to discharge herself. And from that point onwards, didn't let her have any interactions with, doctors who would request an X-ray, for doctors suggesting X-rays or any kind of other, other scans or other, anything else to learn more about her condition. So cut her off completely from conventional medical practitioners.
Gabriel, what went through your mind, and perhaps that of your brother, when you found out what was happening in relation to Paloma and her illness and the lack of treatment?
So what went through my mind is, so I heard it from her boyfriend. It's like 2 days after she'd been discharged, and it just immediately it had gone in my head from, right, my sister has a treatable cancer. It's going to be a scary few months, but it's likely she'll survive to, oh God, my sister's going to die imminently if we don't do something. And I think for me, that's why it immediately spurred me into action. Making a report to social services, and it spurred me into action. And eventually, bringing a case to the High Court.
And we'll come on to that in a moment. But just during that period, presumably you and your brother are urging Paloma to ignore your mum and to get the treatment that she needed. And what was she saying in response?
So Kate pressured my sister to come to, she'd said to her, move out your flat for a bit and stay with me for 6 weeks and I'll teach you how to do this therapy. And Kate did that because it meant that she could leverage a lot of control over my sister and also who couldn't see her. So obviously me and my brother were voicing our concerns to my sister. We were voicing them clearly and loudly. But my mum took this approach of essentially, convincing my sister and saying, block any voice that doesn't agree. And she also stopped me and my brother from visiting the house. So I wasn't able to see my sister for the final 7 months of her life because my mum didn't allow it. And eventually, got my sister to block me. So I wasn't able to communicate with her.
That's so tough, Gabriel. So you didn't, and you spoke to her, but you weren't able to physically see her during that time at all?
Yeah, I wasn't able to physically see her during that time at all, man.
And the sort of alternative therapies that your mum was insisting were better treatments than chemotherapy, what sort of things was she sort of proposing?
Well, so it's a point my brother actually made to me today, and we both agree. We in a weird way, we lament that they're referred to as therapies because, these alternative adding therapy to it almost gives it a legitimacy. Yeah, there's no science behind these, and it's essentially we might as well just call it alternative voodoo because what do these involve? They involve juicing. Sometimes taking medications for off-label effects, and more dangerously, your sort of coffee enemas or the apricot kernels, supplements that can be quite dangerous, especially taken without the advice of a doctor.
And as you rightly say, that have absolutely no scientific basis at all.
Exactly. So it's if anything, we should more just refer to it as voodoo and folk medicine, voodoo and folk treatments, because that's essentially what they are.
And it's notable that your mum, when she herself got cancer, did have conventional treatment. She had a mastectomy, as I understand it.
Yes, exactly. So she had a double mastectomy, which I'm a maths and economics student, so I actually looked into the statistics of it, and someone had done a video on my mother saying that with her type of cancer, with a double mastectomy and no chemotherapy, you have a 78% of survival anyway. So she always runs with this line of, I didn't do chemotherapy. But the response to that is, well, you didn't need to because you had a very good chance of survival anyway without the chemotherapy because you had a mastectomy. But Kay, always curiously, whenever she's preaching to her followers or she's trying to gain traction and persuade people to go her way, she never reveals to them the conventional treatment that she did, or she actively downplays it.
How do you feel about your mum now? And I noticed that you refer to her largely as Kate, Gabriel, rather than mum.
Look, as unemotional way I can put it, I don't have any. I blame her for my sister's death. So obviously there's that. I guess anger is a word towards her there, but there's no love lost between us. I don't feel any love for her. And for me, it's I don't view her as a mother. I view her as a malicious actor who took my sister from me, and a malicious actor that needs to face accountability and needs to face justice. In the same way that a soldier dispassionately, does his job of neutralizing his enemy. It's kind of, I think that's kind of the approach that I take of just, dispassionately pursuing justice and accountability for this woman.
What would justice look like? What should happen to Kate?
So obviously we had to get the coroner's inquest out of the way first, which will establish the facts of the case. My sister's death resulted as from a lack of treatment for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and from that, me and my lawyers have spoken, and we actively want to try and pursue a medical negligence case criminally against my mother. So for me, that's what justice looks like, and I think in a more macro, kind of bigger sense, justice looks like law changes that, firstly, do more to deal with health disinformation online. Harmful, but obviously the online safety bill in its current form doesn't protect against harmful but legal content. That would be something I want to get pressure to change, and more accountability for social media networks, and to stop them from prioritizing engagement over the well-being of society. And I think importantly as well, just the one thing I found throughout the whole court case was control and coercion laws just completely aren't fit for purpose, and to update control and coercion laws so they acknowledge these kinds of medical coercion, but also so it's we can protect the victims of it far better.
Yeah. And you're talking about the fact that this is depressingly and shockingly common, Gabriel, of course, the fact that so many people get lured down these extreme kind of radical rabbit holes. The answer to this might be no, and feel free to say no. Do you see your mum as a victim in any way on this, of brainwashing by others? Or do you think is it hard to see past the way that she's behaved in this?
So I don't actually see so I do believe there are victims to conspiracy theories, but I don't see Kay as a victim, because if we're looking at sort of like victims and perpetrators, I think the victims are the ones where the conspiracy theory found them, and they caught it almost in the same way that you catch a virus.
Yes.
My mom is a different strand, where she's a very narcissistic personality with almost messianic complex. So she sought out beliefs which make her feel important and feed this messianic complex. So Kay was always going to find something to do that, and she found conspiracy theory to do that. And because there was that sort of because they required that action from her, I don't see her as a victim. I see her as a person who chose to perpetrate them. If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. It makes absolute sense. And am I right to think that even now she doesn't accept any sort of responsibility for what happened to her daughter and your sister?
So she accepts none whatsoever. No, so she tries to chuck a variety of red herrings. She's even gone as far to claim that my sister didn't even have cancer, or that it wasn't a real diagnosis. Just anything to basically cover herself. And she's, leveled numerous allegations at myself and my brother about our character, which are completely unfounded and just outright false. So she doesn't accept any responsibility, and she seeks to blame everyone else. And I think, to be honest, everyone kind of sees through it as the sort of the self-serving, as the self-serving operation that it is from her.
Yeah. And you've been talking about this very bravely. You've been doing interviews, you've been speaking out about it and trying to get, as you say, Gabriel, justice for Paloma. I just wanted to finish, obviously this is a story about your mum and the allegations that you've made against her, but at the heart of this is obviously your twin sister, who's no longer with us. How do you remember her?
I remember her as she was super funny, with a similar sense of humour, and she was she was a bit of a walking contradiction, because she went to Cambridge University and she was very pretty, so you'd assume she had it all together. But she was incredibly nerdy, incredibly goofy. Would always, like me, we have really bad spatial awareness. So she'd always be bumping into stuff, or she'd walk with a real slouch. So I just remember her as the sort of like funny scatterbrain that she was. I think for me it's important that obviously this terrible thing happened to her. But I think it's important that we remember her also for the person that she was. Absolutely. And sort of the great person that she was.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you about it. And it's her that is driving you to take this action and to try to seek justice for her.
Exactly.
She's not here today.
This is the thing where I try not to. Obviously I feel a certain type of way towards Kay, but I try not to make it all just about this rage I feel towards my mother, because the real.
Is that hard? Is that hard not to be consumed by hate, anger?
Not really, because I feel like my love and the grief at the loss of my sister, it kind of, I guess it completely outweighs any kind of feelings of anger, because you want, it's like, like I'd make the whole world shout if it meant that my sister could hear how much I loved her again. Like you kind of, it outweighs everything else, and you're just completely focused on justice. You let go of any ideas of like, what do I personally want? Like, how do I, personally satiate this anger? And you just think, what's best for my sister's memory? So I guess, it's in a weird way that's kind of easy, I guess.